Assalamu alaikum guys, so I just want to share a very beautiful point from the 15th chapter of the Divine Reality called The Free Slave. Now, in this particular section, the whole chapter is regarding worship. Now, let me give you a bit of context before we go into this section. We know the core essence of Islam is submission. Submission to the will of God. God tells us very clearly in the Quran, and He reminds humanity one last time, as He has throughout history, that He created human beings, He created us for no other reason except to worship Him. He outlines this very clearly in the Quran. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That, in a nutshell, He created us for no other reason except that we worship Him. That is the purpose of our existence. Now, however, when you think about this, especially from the perspective of the English language, from the perspective of the 21st century, when you hear and you think about the words such as worship, submission, slavery, these bring to mind some, generally speaking, negative thoughts, right? They have negative associations attached to them, these words. However, from the Islamic perspective, submission and slavery, and servitude to God, to our Creator, is something actually quite profound. And it's something that I would argue, and what Hamza argues as well, is something that truly liberates you. It truly frees you. Now, you may be thinking, hold on a second, isn't that a contradiction? On one hand, you're saying submission and slavery and servitude. On the other hand, you're saying this equals freedom and, liberation. How does this work? Now, what he points out, and I'm going to summarize this in my own way, what he basically says, and he highlights, is that, look, this whole idea of being free and liberated is actually not true. If you really think about it, you scrutinize this idea, because the reality is every single human being is a slave, is submitting to something or the other. Nobody's free. So the idea of freedom is just illusory. It's just there. It's something that's sold to us. It seems quite appealing. But when you really scratch the surface, what you realize is, hold on a second, no one is really free. No one is, free in the true sense of being free, because everyone is submitting to something. Everyone is a slave of something. Some people submit to materialism, right? He points this out in this chapter, that there are some people out there that are slaves of this materialistic ideology, this materialistic outlook on life, where they define themselves through material possessions. Others are slaves to other people, other human beings. Others may be slaves to themselves. Because take the most extreme example, for example, right? For example, take the person who says, I am free, I follow no one, I follow no system, no person, no ideology, nothing, right? I do what I want to do. Now, this individual, the clues in what they say, I do what I want to do. This individual is submitting to themselves. They're a slave of their own desires, their own wants, their own notions of what right and wrong is, what they should and shouldn't do. They're a slave to their own desires. So in the grand sense of, in the grand scheme of things, if we really scrutinize this idea, what you realize is that no one is truly free. However, what Islam does is something very remarkable. What Islam offers you, Islam comes in to awaken humanity, to wake us up to the reality that, look, hold on a second, you were created to be a slave of the Creator. And it's through the submission and servitude to God that you will find true liberation and freedom from a worldly sense, from a worldly perspective. Because think about this for a second. When the human being truly submits himself and enslaves himself to his Creator, right? So he is no longer a slave to anything else. That means he is completely submitting himself as to the best of his ability to his Creator. And as soon as he does this, as soon as he gives himself or she gives herself over to his or her Creator, then at that very moment they become free from a worldly perspective. No longer are they a slave to material things. No longer are they a slave to money or other people or ideas and X, Y, and Z, or even their own desires. Because now they're not following what the direction their desires are pushing them towards. They are submitting themselves to the will of God. They are trying to do and live a life in line with what God has told them to do, instead of what they want to do. So they, from a worldly perspective, they are truly liberated and free. And this is something very profound, because I would argue there is no other way of achieving true freedom, true liberation. There's no way of escaping this world and submission to this world. There's absolutely no way, if you really think about it, other than through submitting yourself to the Creator of everything that exists. So the choice is yours. Do you want to be a slave to created things, or do you want to be a slave to the Creator of the created things? Right? That's essentially the choice we have to make. And I would argue that the rational individual, the humble, sincere individual who's really pondering about these things and reflecting over these things and is asking these questions, they would realize that as an intelligent, rational human being, you know, who has been blessed with these abilities, the most rational and intelligent thing to do is submit yourself to the creator of all, you know, and not created things. And in doing so, you know, you are now fulfilling the purpose of your existence. And in doing so, what would happen is that you would see, you would taste, and you experience for yourself your life change. You know, you will find that peace and tranquility that you're looking for. It doesn't mean life's going to be perfect, you know, and it's going to be all rosy. No. However, you know, you will still have tests and trials, but however, what you will gain from submitting yourself to your creator is that relationship you need with your creator and the tools you need to navigate this life. And God will be with you, right? However, you know, that goes into another topic. But what I wanted to simply do in this video was just to share that small section from this book, and I really recommend you guys pick this up and read this, because there are such profound gems scattered throughout this entire book. You know, and I just want you to reflect upon the reality of submission and slavery. And just to conclude, one last thing I want to mention is when we talk about submission and slavery in Islam and submission to God, this is not a negative thing. It's actually quite a liberating thing, as we've seen, but it's actually quite holistic as well. Submission doesn't just mean praying 5 times a day in Islam. As God said, our entire lives were created, everything about our existence should be about submitting ourselves to our Creator and worshipping Him. Therefore, everything we do in our lives could be a form of worship. Even waking up in the morning, brushing your teeth and having your breakfast, right? That could be a form of worship if done with the right intention, right? So your entire life, every single moment of your existence becomes valuable, becomes meaningful through it becoming a moment of submission and servitude. Anyway, hopefully that's giving you guys something to think about. Like I said, pick up this book, make sure you read it. It's actually brilliant. If you're an atheist, if you're a theist, whoever you are, it's a brilliant book to read.